sure that I'm sharing my desktop. Here we go. Okay. So hello, everyone. My name is Nina Boord. I am a CS student at Stanford University, and I kind of scraped together a little lesson today about HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And we're going to do that using rock, paper, scissors as our project. Totally okay if you don't even know what those are. We're just going to go through them. The whole goal of this is just to get an understanding of the programming languages, not for you to be a master in 1 hour and or even be able to do this by yourself. It's just to get an overview so you can kind of see what this is all about and get an inside look of what all of our websites are made of, which I think is really cool. So HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language. It's not considered a programming language. It's technically a markup language. You can kind of think of it as the skeleton of the code. So it's made up of tags. Everything goes in between these tags and they kind of make up, you'll see as we go, but the structure of your code. So these are some different kinds of tags. There's the head tag, which kind of gives you some background about the page, and then the body tag, and most of what you see on any web page goes in between the body tags. So you can kind of see the structure here. Everything goes in between the HTML tags, and then head, and then body, and between the body tags, you're going to get H1, which is a type of heading, P, which is a paragraph. So everything you see on your web pages are going to be in between these tags. There's so many different kinds. We're just going to start with the basic ones. That's all you're really going to need to know for now. Honestly, programmers don't really use HTML anymore. They don't type it themselves. They write code to type it for them because it is kind of a lot of work to just, write every single tag for every single thing that you see on a web page. But it's really important to know kind of what's going on in the background so you have a good understanding of what you're doing as a computer scientist. Or even as not a computer scientist, just understanding the internet, I think, is a great thing too. So yeah. So again, there's many different kinds of tags, HTML, head, body, title, BR stands for break, UL is an unordered list. So if you see bullet points, or if you see 1, 2, 3, 4, all of those are tags. Each one has a different identifier. A stands for link, image gives you an image, all of that. And if you want to italicize something, you use I, B for bold, strong for bold, B, not even sure what that's for, but basically so many different kinds. Cascading style sheets is what CSS stands for. So CSS and HTML are two different languages that are connected. So you'll stick this little, for example, this little tag called a link tag in your HTML, and it connects it to your CSS file. And your CSS file looks kind of like this. Basically, it takes an identifier. So you say body, for example, and it takes every single thing inside of those body tags, and you can change the properties of whatever's in those body tags. So for example, if what's inside the body tags is a piece of text, you can say font family Arial, and boom, all that text will change to Arial. So it's a really fast and easy way to give your HTML style, because plain HTML looks really ugly, kind of like these slides, honestly. Just plain text, white background, black text, super boring. So we want to spice it up using CSS. And again, once we actually code, this will make a lot more sense. I just want to give a brief overview. So in general, there are 3 layers of the web. HTML for content, so a paragraph, for example, everything. So, everything goes in between the paragraph tags in this situation. And then EM is used, it's just another tag you can use. And this download link goes in between the EM tags. For example, CSS for presentation. Here, the class is warning. And then here, this dot indicates that everything with a class of warning to turn it the color red. So this small snippet of code would just turn this red, this HTML snippet of text. And then finally, JavaScript for behavior. So we'll learn a little bit more about JavaScript today, and that's kind of the primary focus where I want to focus the presentation since I think it's the most important skill to have. JavaScript basically tells those web pages in those texts and tags and everything what to do. So whenever you say like, take your mouse and you hover on a link and it turns another color, or if you hover on a button and it turns another color, or something moves, or you click on something and something is animated, usually 99% of the time that is used or that is done using JavaScript. So super important, makes websites interactive, makes them fun and interesting to look at. All web developers use JavaScript. So more about JavaScript, it's an actual programming language. Again, like all animations, slideshows, all that is done using JavaScript. So a little background. This isn't super important right now, but as we go, it'll be more important. There are variables in JavaScript. Think of a variable as a word that stores a bit of information. There are functions in JavaScript. Just think of a function as a set of instructions that can be called over and over. So you can say those set of instructions multiple times without having to rewrite that set of instructions. You just write it once and then you can call it over and over, which is a really cool thing about functions. Makes your code a lot more efficient. If-else statements, pretty self-explanatory, basically just saying if a condition is true, do this, else do something else. You can kind of put them together. So you can say if, else, if, else, if, else, and might look a little confusing, but again, we'll get to it. Really just simple way to tell a computer to do something if something is true, or something else if something is false. And then finally, really important, since we're doing a code along, I don't know exactly how much you guys will be coding with me, but using semicolons. Semicolons are extremely important because if you miss a semicolon in JavaScript or CSS for that matter, the code will break and your computer will go, and your code's not going to work. And you're going to be like, oh my gosh, but everything looks perfect. A lot of the times it's literally just a typo or a semicolon. So really important that you put your semicolons at the end of every line. Does anyone have any questions so far? That's kind of a lot. No? Okay, well, do not be afraid to stop me if you do. So let's get started. Hopefully all of you guys have VS Code downloaded. If you want to code along, that would be amazing. If not, you don't have to. You can just kind of see as I do it. But you want to start with an HTML file. I guess I will show you guys how to kind of do that. So this is something called VS Code. I will show you, I'll give you a little insight of what we're going to be building. So basically it's this rock, paper, scissors page. You can see that this is the HTML, and you can tell because of the head and body tags, everything is in tags, very simply HTML. You can tell that this is CSS, and I'm going to delete the comments so you can kind of see the colors, but this has the arrangement of CSS because you have selector and then you have properties. Selector would be the heading. So I'm basically here telling all headings to be color blue, and we'll go over that later. And then this is JavaScript. So this is going to be the more difficult part, I guess, of our coding, but I think a lot more fun. And this is just kind of what it looks like. And this is what we're going to be building today. So if you want to open a new file, you can go to File and Open, and you want to open a new folder. Like basically just an empty folder on your computer. So make an empty folder and then click Open and then select that folder. Is anyone going to be coding along using VS Code? Yes or no? Because if not, I will skip those steps. Everyone is very quiet today. You can drop it in the chat. if you are coding along. No? Okay. Okay, well, wait, actually, oops. Oh, someone said yes. Okay, thank you, Jason. Okay, cool. So, really quick, Jason and anyone else, make a, just, you can like literally, oh, those are notes for me, new folder. You can call it like RPS, for example, rock, paper, scissors. And then you're gonna go to VS Code and you're just gonna click File, Open, and then open up that folder, and then hit Open. And then once you've done that, it should show up right here. And then you can create a new file and you can name it index.html and you should get a blank HTML file. I just already kind of set that up because want to make sure everything's here for us to work. Okay, cool. So hopefully all on the same page. If not, please let me know. Kind of hard to see the chat, but okay, cool. Yeah, exactly. Name it index. That's totally fine that you don't have the CSS and JS files. We'll make those as we go. So we're just going to focus with HTML for now. So first thing that I want you guys to do, oops. Okay, first thing I want you guys to do is do a little exclamation mark and then tab. So when you do an exclamation mark and a tab, it sets up your HTML file for you. So super fun, easy shortcut. You really do not need to worry about any of this stuff. It is just basically setting up your file for you. Really, really fun shortcut. This is exactly what it should look like. So we're gonna start off there. Actually, you know what? I'll show you guys what you guys are gonna be building because I think that is important as well. Oops. So this is what we're going to be building. It's just a super basic web page. Welcome to rock, paper, scissors. And when you click on rock, for example, you can click submit. It tells you what you chose. It tells you what the computer chose, and it gives you a result. So in this case, it was a tie. The computer has a 1/3 chance of choosing each rock, paper, scissors. So you never know what you're going to get. So in this instance, I hit submit, I chose paper, the computer chose rock, and I won, and you can just keep clicking and you'll keep getting new results. So that's basically what we're building today. Okay, back to HTML. So I'm just gonna comment this out. And when I say comment this out, I mean, I'm telling the computer it's a comment. So it's not going to be part of the code. It's just there for me to see, for humans to see. I wanna start fresh with you guys and go as you go. Okay, let's get to coding. So exclamation mark, tab. You're gonna get the head, the body, everything like that. Cool. Present. Okay. So you want to open up a live server. So just as I showed you what the code does, you can also hit just right click, open with live server, and you're going to get that blank web page. It'll be blank right now because you haven't actually coded anything yet, but as you go, you'll be able to see it update, which is really cool with your code. So right click, open with live server, and it should open up a page with your code working on it. How do I use localhost? For me, I just open with live server and then it should just pop up as a blank page. Is that not happening for you? Oh, you don't have the option. Oh. Man, I'm not exactly sure why that's not popping up. Oh, Windows. I don't know. I'm so sorry. Okay, I would just say watch me for now and then maybe look up later how to open it up. Yeah, I'm not sure how to help with that. So sorry. But yeah, okay. I just want to make sure that we get going. So HTML. Not a huge deal if you can't code along, or you can code along, but you won't be able to see the results, but you'll be able to see them on my page. So hopefully that'll be good. First of all, we're going to change the content in the title tags. So title, that is basically if you ever see a tab literally on any website and what it says at the top, that is the title. So we're going to say, instead of document, we're going to say welcome to rock, paper, scissors. Cool. So that means just the tab. I'm just going to say that. Within the body tag, we're going to add a new set of tags, H1 tags. So H1 stands for heading 1, and it's like the largest heading that you can have in HTML. There's headings 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We're just going to use number 1 because it's the biggest, and we want to have a big title for our page. So in between the body tags, you want to make sure you do like exactly this. Really cool thing about these coding platforms nowadays is that you, oh, sorry, I'm looking at the chat. Yes, you should be able to use CSS. If we're just gonna be using basic CSS, not necessarily a new framework. I hope that answers your question. We'll get to CSS later, and it's not super important part of this project anyway. JavaScript's gonna be a lot more important. So really quick, in the H1 tags, just say welcome to paper, scissors. Save that. We're going to open with live server, and boom, look at that. It says welcome to rock, paper, scissors. This was your H1. And up here, this tab is your title. So there you have it. Making progress already. Okay. Next, in between, or sorry, after the H1 tags, we're going to create a div tag, and we're going to space them out. So divs, not super necessary all the time, but they keep your code nice and neat. Really important for like moving stuff around and just keeping things in little boxes, basically. So we're going to start a div tag. And leave some space. Yes, exactly, like div class equals container. Perfect. Yeah, that's what we'd use divs for. We're not going to put a class on this one for now, but you totally can, and we could mess with that maybe if we have extra time. Cool. Now we're going to create something called radio buttons. So as you saw in the example, there was little buttons. You can only choose one at a time, and they all had a different property, rock, paper, or scissors. So really quick, we're going to create those. So these buttons are called inputs. An input tag is any type of tag that creates something that you are telling your computer. So for example, a multiple choice, a checkbox, a radio button, a text input. Anything you'd see on a form can be an input tag. So input, for example, we're going to give this first one, ID of rock, type radio, name choice. And we're going to wrap N tags over rock. And N is just basically the text for that input. So we know N is the thing that like appears on the web page. And that's it. So we'll just do this. ID equals rock, radio, and type equals radio. That's just a radio button. That's all you're telling the computer to do for that. And then you name choice. Name can really be anything, but you want to make sure that the name for each radio button matches up. And that's how the computer knows to put those radio buttons together. So only one radio button can be selected at one time. Cool. And rock. And that's really that. And then you want to be efficient as you code. I like to just copy and paste and just do paper, because these two things are going to be the same. ID scissors and scissors. So I'll give you a second to do that. Another thing that I like to do is use break tags. So I want to make sure that this stuff is spaced out on the web page. So you're going to see now that, oops, here, I'll put this in a new tab. I mean, this spacing is totally fine, but if you want to line them up, you use break tags. So you just do BR for each one. Basically, this just says like skip a line. And then boom, you have these aligned a little bit more nicely. Break tags are interesting because you don't really need to close them. Most, like in HTML, you have to close all your tags using the same tag with a slash, but for BR, we don't have to do that for whatever reason. I don't even know why, but yeah, cool. Now we have our input buttons. So as you can kind of see, we are building the structure of our web page here. It's nothing flashy. It's just what the user is going to be looking at. Cool. That's not what I meant to click. Okay. Great. So I kind of explained this, but ID is something we're going to use later. That just allows you to identify something on your CSS or JavaScript files. Type, again, just radio buttons, and BR add spacing. So everything I already said. Okay, cool. So now let's create a submit button. So again, this is an input tag, except this is a little different. We're creating a submit button rather than a radio button. So we're just going to say input equals submit. Pay attention to the syntax here. You want to make sure to put an equal sign and then just one quotation mark. I guess you could actually use 2 quotation marks if you want to, but value equals submit. ID, I'm going to give it an ID of BTN standing for button. And that's it. I'm going to add a couple break tags just to like space it out. And then we're going to take a look. Okay, so as you can see, there's no break tag between scissors and submit, so I'm just going to troubleshoot a little bit and add one. Oops. And still kind of ugly, so I'm going to add one more break. And then boom, you should have this. So I'll give everyone 1 second. And there are tips in the chat if you want to make your buttons bigger. Cool stuff. Okay. Now we are going to create basically just an empty tag where we're later going to put our results using JavaScript. For now, it's just going to be an empty tag and we're going to call it result. So span ID equals result and then end the span tag. So just empty for now. Cool. And then finally, we want to connect our JavaScript to our HTML. So really quick, let's create, so you can just do new file and call it, I called it game.js because we're creating kind of a game. Make sure that when you connect your file, it looks exactly like as it's named. So just do game.js to be simple. Again, right click, new file, just name it game.js. And then put that, put it within, it doesn't really matter exactly where, but let's put it here. Uh-oh, there we go. Script, and we're gonna say source equals game.js. Cool. So now our HTML file is going to be hooked to our JavaScript file. I'm going to comment this out for now because I want to write it with you guys, but they should now be connected. Cool. And then make sure to do like Control S or Command S to save, or else your stuff is not going to pop up on your live server. So just make sure every time you make a change, you want to save it, just in case you don't want to lose anything, obviously. Okay, cool. So that's honestly pretty much it for HTML. Really simple. The final thing that I want to do is I want to add something to our CSS file. So we want to add our CSS file too. Let's just do that now. It looks like this. So link rel equals style sheet. And that just basically means that this is a CSS file that we're linking to. And then href equals style.css. Make sure that you name your CSS file style.css and then link it that way. So we're going to do that in the head of rel equals style sheet. And oops. Should have closed that. Okay. That is pretty much it. Everything should be connected now. Cool. So let's save that. Does anyone have any questions? I will look in the chat to make sure. No? Okay. Sorry, chat is not popping up, but I hope there's no questions. Okay. Great. So now we're gonna go do, well, okay. Let's just go to JavaScript because I think it's a lot more fun. Real quick, this is what it should look like. Again, make a JavaScript file, new file, pretty simple. Okay, so this is the fun stuff. We are going to run this JavaScript script. So back up a little. Before you write code, you want to kind of think about, what am I writing and what is it supposed to do? And what tools do I need to use to accomplish what I'm supposed to do? So again, we're just making a rock, paper, scissors game. So we have a human choice and we have a computer choice, and we are comparing them against each other to see a result. And the result is either you win, you lose, or it's a tie. So we want to run this script, first of all, every time the submit button is clicked. So this is important because there has to be some kind of trigger for this script to run. So that's one thing I jotted down. Second thing is that we're going to create a variable called computer choice. And every time the game is played, computer choice has a 1/3 chance of either rock, paper, or scissors. So like a variable, for example, or as I said, is a word that holds a piece of information. So in this case, this piece of information is either rock, paper, or scissors, 1/3 chance of each of them happening every time the code is run. And then we will create a variable called human choice. Human choice is going to be a little bit different because it's determined by the input, what the user inputs into the program. So basically just which radio button is selected, rock, paper, or scissors. And then basically taking those two variables at the end, comparing them using if-else statements and determining the winner. So just kind of get that in your head is like, what am I going to do? And then once you write it out, it'll make more sense. Cool. So first, we're going to create something called an event listener. An event listener is something that basically takes a tag in your HTML file and says, if you click on it, this will happen, or run this script, or run this function. So really, I mean, you might remember like maybe 20 minutes ago, we assigned an ID equals button to our submit button. That's going to come in handy now. So I will kind of show you how this works. So, and this is, trust me, way more fun than HTML. If only Zoom could stop bothering me and I can, oh, okay, here we go. So the syntax for this, just kind of follow along with the syntax. You're going to say document. That's just kind of saying the web page. You're going to say dot get element by ID. So get element by ID, you're basically saying within the document, this element of ID button, you're going to put in parentheses with little quotation marks, exactly like that, button, dot add event listener. And then again, event listener, just telling people or telling the computer we want to add some kind of event to this button. So this event that we're adding is click. So on click, we want to run a function. Looks like this. So I'll give you a second to write that out. Yeah, that's really it. Template literals. Yes, we will be using template literals later. To answer your question. Okay. Yes, we will be doing that for the results section. To answer your question. Cool. So we are great. So now we're just saying every time you click the submit button, we're going to run this function or this set of instructions. Cool. So everything else, by the way, that we write for the rest of the lesson is going to go in between these brackets. It's going to be this function. So now we're going to create a variable called computer choice again. So just repeating at the top what we went over later. So let's learn a little bit about math.random. So math.random is a randomly generated number between 1 and 0. It's sort of a built-in function to JavaScript. So all you have to do is call it. You don't have to create the function. When I say call a function, I just mean like put the function name, some parentheses, and then a semicolon. That is called calling a function. That basically says this set of instructions run. So let's set a variable called random equal to this random number between 1 and 0. So let random equal dot random. So all you're saying here is you're declaring a variable. The word let just says tell the computer to make random equal math.random. So let is just a way of saying create a variable. You can also use var, and there's other ways to do it too. Const is another one, but we're just gonna use let for now because it's the best one, I think. Cool. So now we have a random number. Cool. So now we want to create the variable computer choice. So before you use a variable anytime in your code, you want to initialize it. This is just a really good habit to have. Initializing just means saying let basically this variable exist. So computer choice. And then again, semicolon. Always want to use that semicolon. Cool. So now we have two variables. We have an empty variable computer choice, and we have a variable called random, which is a random number between 1 and 0. Cool. Now that we've initialized our variable, we can use it in an if-else statement. So we're going to use if-else statements to see or to choose or make the computer choose, I guess, whether to choose rock, paper, or scissors. So I'll just kind of go through this and explain it. So if random, and remember, random is a number between 0 and 1, but we don't know what random is. So we're just saying if random is less than 0.33. So kind of think of, the number between 0 and 1, basic math. There's a 33% chance that it's going to be between 0 and 0.33. So we are taking advantage of that now and just saying if random is less than this, then computer choice equals rock. I'm going to use all caps here because it's just going to make it easier later to read the code. Now we're going to write another statement. So the computer is going to kind of parse through this and it's going to say, okay, if random is less than 0.33, boom, it's rock. But if it isn't true, if this condition is not true and random is actually 0.6, for example, then the computer is going to continue. It's going to look for that else statement. So else if, but since we have 3 conditions here that we want to use, we're going to use an else if statement. So else if well, actually 0.33 is less than random, and use 2 ampersands to say and So make sure both these conditions are true. Random is less than 0.67. Again, this literally just means if random is between 0.33 and 0.67, except you can't write that as one line. So we use this one and this one. Then computer choice equals paper. Cool. And then finally, there's only one other condition that can be true. So if the number random is not below 0.33, and if it's not between 0.33 and 0.67, then it must be above 0.67. You can also say else if above 0.67, but we want our code to be as clean and efficient as possible. So we're just going to say else because there's no other thing that it could possibly be. So else just means that if the two above are false, then do this. So that means computer choice equals. Cool. Okay. Add those semicolons. Okay. Wonderful. That's really it. Cool. Yeah, now we have a computer choice variable. I just want to give everyone a second to kind of take that in, type that out. Any questions? The chat is open. I'm looking. Cool. All right. Well, let's just keep going. Okay, now that you have a variable computer choice that is equal to rock, paper, or scissors, you can now create a variable called human choice. So let's initialize 3 more variables. This one's a little bit harder to like wrap your head around conceptually, so just try to take it slow. These variables will be true if the corresponding radio button is checked, and they will be false if the radio button is not checked. So we're basically telling the computer to check, is this radio button checked? If the radio button is checked, then the variable rock checked is going to be true. If it's not checked, variable rock checked is going to be false. The way that we're going to do this is we're going to say let rock checked, that's the new variable, equal document.getElementById rock. And if you remember in our index.html, we made this input with the ID of rock. So we're just saying specifically this radio button, is it checked, yes or no? Let's do that. Let equals document get element by ID rock dot that's it. And then let paper checked that's it. Well, not quite. We're going to use that later, but that is it for now. So now we have 3 variables, and one of them is true. The other 2 are false. It just depends whichever one the user chooses to be true. And by choosing it to be true, I mean it is the user clicked that radio button. Okay, cool. So now we're going to initialize human choice, the variable, so we can use it in an if-else statement again. So we're going to say let human choice. And again, you can actually name your variables whatever you want, but it's really good to have descriptive variable names. So when you're looking back into your code, you understand what the heck it is. I could name this literally chicken if I wanted to, but you know, we want to make sure that we are being consistent. And when you look back at your code and all your variables are named weird things, you're going to be confused at what you're looking at. So just call it human choice for now. So if equals true. So when you're comparing, so as you can see, I used equals for like this literally equals this. Double equals in JavaScript basically means you are comparing, you're deciding, you're trying to see, is this equal to true? It's kind of just something that is used within if-else statements. So 3, that is a great question. I'm pretty sure you can actually use 2 or 3 when you're comparing things. I use 2. I just think it's easier. But yeah, 2 or 3 just basically means like, isn't used for blank blank. You can use 2 or 3 exclamation, or sorry, equal signs. I hope that answers your question. It should not matter. Code should still work. Okay. Yeah, no problem. So if rock checked equals true, now human choice should equal rock. Cool. And literally same thing here. If, else if, something else, you know, paper checked, true. Human choice equals paper. And I know I used only else, but we want to make sure that even if nothing is clicked, this code doesn't still run. So use else if in this case, and not just else. Let's see, scissors check. Oops, don't know what happened there. And cool, and those semicolons, and hit save. Great. Okay, so now we have our human choice. So now we have 2 variables. One of them is rock. One of them either rock, paper, or scissors. One of them is either rock, paper, scissors. We want to compare them for our result. So finally, we are going to, again, basic rules, rock beats scissors, paper beats rock, scissors beats paper, if you need a refresher. So let's write that in code. Let's initialize a variable called result, and then we're going to basically store our result to be shown later within our HTML, and I'll kind of show you how to do that. So let's just say for now, let result. Cool. That's it. Now we're going to use some if-else statements. These are going to be a little bit more complex than our last 2, but hopefully seeing the last 2 will make these make more sense. Just remember that and like ampersand means and then 2 lines means or. So that's going to come up when we use our if-else statements. So when does a tie happen? Well, that's when your choice is equal to the computer's choice. So let's try that. So if human choice equals computer choice, result equals try again. Cool. So kind of think about the cases. So one case is that they're the same. Again, you just say try again. Another case is that the computer wins, and another case is that the human wins. So let's talk about when the human loses. So there's 3 ways that this can happen. So I've already put them here, but computer chooses rock and you choose scissors, or computer chooses paper and you choose rock, or the computer chooses scissors and you choose paper. So basically 3 ways that the computer can beat you. So it's often helpful, especially when you're writing. I mean, obviously this is pretty simple, like a simple program, but when you're, out there writing more complex programs, I think it's super, actually, actual computer scientists do this. It's called pseudocode, and they actually write out the logic before they code. Just basically like doing a rough draft before you do the final product, same exact line of reasoning. So yeah, so I wrote out the logic here. So let's write that out. Okay. And I can actually just delete this because this is not what we are at. So we're going to say else if choice equals rock and paper, or and equals scissors. So again, if you pick paper, computer equals scissors, you're gonna lose. So in each case, you are the loser. Cool. Now we're gonna say result equals you lose. Does all of this make sense? I'm just gonna assume it does. Can I copy and paste? Yes, I can. So very similar logic going into the next phase. You want to write down your logic. So in the final case, the human wins. And there's 3 ways that can happen. The computer chooses scissors and you choose rock. Computer chooses paper. Oh, sorry, rock and you choose paper. Computer chooses paper and you choose scissors. So writing out that logic helps when you're actually writing out the code. So if human choice is rock and computer choice is scissors, exactly what it says here, that is 1. And this is separated by an and, but these are separated by ors because these are separate cases, I guess. Different ways of winning or losing. So cool. So we're basically going to type that out again. Actually, I won't bore you. I'm just going to copy and paste it. That's why I have this here. Yeah, that's it. Okay, result, you win. Nice. So now you have this variable called result, and it either has 3 different values. One of these values has one of them. Oh, there's an error in my code. Let's double check that. So usually it'll tell you this game.js has an error. So you're gonna actually encounter a lot of errors as you code. And make sure, oops, I had an extra bracket, I believe. No? Well, whatever, I'll fix that later. Okay. Oh, what? Interesting. I don't know, I must have, well, you're gonna feel the frustration as a computer scientist all the time when you maybe misspell something and you put a colon in the wrong place or something like that, and your code is just not going to work. So that happens quite a lot, and it might happen to, well, it will happen to you as a computer scientist, but all you have to do, just troubleshoot, just be patient, just look through your code and fix the error. Usually they're pretty simple to fix. Yeah, cool. Great. So finally, we are going to print or like put our results onto our HTML page. And we're going to do that using event or template literals. Sorry, not event literals, template literals. So I'll just kind of show you that last line too. Okay, I will just copy and paste this entire thing. And I can also send the code, like I'll send the code in an email or something if you guys want to drop your emails, and I can send you the code and I can send you the slides and everything like that. Make sure that this code is working. Interesting. I don't know what the issue is. Okay, is everyone on the same page? Well, if anyone sees an issue in my code, it seems to say that there is one issue in my code, let me know. Cool. Finally, you're going to create a new variable and you're going to call it results. So let results equal. And now we're going to do something, again, like I said, template literals. So we're going to put something that we already talked about in our JavaScript, and we're going to put it inside our HTML so that the web page actually views it. Everything that we're writing here is on the back end. You're not really going to see here. See how this actually looks. You're not really going to see anything that you write on the actual screen until you use template literals or some way of kind of connecting the HTML to the JavaScript. So even though all this code is running, we can't see anything until we do that. So that's what we're doing now. We're saying we're going to call this variable results with an S, different than result. And now we're not going to use quotation marks. We're going to use backticks, and you can kind of find that, at least on my MacBook Pro. Sorry, somebody's in the chat. Just did a function for result. You can do it however you want to do it. I'm just showing one way of doing it. There are many different ways you can do. Literally so many ways you can write one type of code. Sometimes, people prefer like cleaner code or more robust code. Doesn't really matter. But yes, if you have another way of doing it, that also works. Okay, let results equal. So we're going to use something called a backtick. That can be found on your MacBook next to number 1. It's sort of like the top left corner of your keyboard. You want to use backticks for this because we're going to be using template literals, which I will show you in just a second. Cool. Sorry about that. Okay. So we're going to show our results, but inside the HTML. So basically a template literal, it's used for some reason using a $sign and then brackets, and then the name of the variable that you are displaying inside your HTML. Literally, it just displays that variable in your HTML. That's literally what it does. Basically puts it as part of the text. Cool. So we're going to write that real quick. So we are basically putting in our own HTML within our JavaScript, and we're calling it results. And we're going to say you'll kind of see, but we're taking this snippet of HTML and we're putting it inside of our HTML, what we're writing right now. So you chose, and that's the reason why we're using paragraph tags, because we want to make it in HTML form. So you chose, and then we're going to say human choice. And then we're going to do new paragraph, computer, put the little comma for results. Oh, the backtick. So yeah, that can be found. It should be the top. It's like, should be the same key as like the squiggly line. It's called a backtick. If you actually want to like look up backtick online, if you can't find it, and then copy and paste. Oh, perfect. Yeah, that also works. Copy and paste from Monsufa. Should be able to just copy and paste that. Great. Thanks guys for helping him out. Okay, so I'm gonna just keep going. The computer chose. And computer choice. Make sure to make that a closing tag, closing p tag. And then just put result, because the result already says try again, you win, you lose. So we're just gonna say result. left line. That's literally it for results. That's the HTML that's going to pop up. And then finally, very last step is that you may remember the span tag that we created with ID of result. We are going to change the HTML of that span using .inner HTML. This is just kind of like a new way, I guess, a new thing that we're covering is .inner HTML. You're literally just changing the HTML that you already wrote, and you're putting your JavaScript into that HTML. So let's write it. Document .get element by ID result. Doesn't matter if you use 2 quotation marks or 1, as long as the stuff in the middle is the same. .inner HTML equals results. So this get element by ID, we are talking about the element span ID equals result. That is, this span tag is what we're literally changing with just one line of code. We are changing it to our variable results, and our variable results is this. So let's run our code. Haha. I think that there is an error in the code because, well, it should work for you guys, that's for sure. Let's see if I can find if there's an error. I think I might have made a typo somewhere, not gonna lie, but your rock, paper, scissors should work. Does anyone have any questions? Is there rock, paper, scissors working, not working? Okay, someone has an error. Bracket at the end. Sorry, Ryan, where do you see a loose bracket? I think I do have a loose bracket somewhere. And that is, oh, you know what? I know exactly what you're talking about. Does that work? No. Function. Interesting. Okay, well, I forgot a bracket somewhere, guys. I am only human and I made an error. So that's unfortunate, but it should work. Assuming that there's no misaligned brackets. That is just the beauty of being a computer scientist. You will just forget a punctuation mark and it won't work. But that is pretty much the lesson. I hope you learned something, whether it's about if-else statements or about variables or just about web pages in general. We're pretty much out of time. Real quick, CSS, super simple. You can just put, for example, any name of any tag, h1, bracket, the name, like say color equals blue, and you're gonna see this, for example. I'll delete this for now. You might remember our H1 that says rock, paper, scissors, boom, blue. So that's basically all CSS does. There's many other different ways of doing it, text align center, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, wanted to definitely focus on the JavaScript. Does anyone have any final questions? Nope. Okay, well, thank you for listening. I got to get to a panel or something right now. Hope you learned something again, and see you later.